Chapter 8. On June 18th, 5 hours after he talked to his cousin Bill Hopscomb, Joseph Robert Brentwood pulled down a speeder on Texas Highway 40 about 25 miles east of Arnett. The speeder was Harry Trent of Braintree, an insurance man. He had been doing 65 and a 50. Joe Bob gave him a speeding ticket. Trent accepted it humbly and then amused Joe Bob by trying to sell him insurance on his house and his life. Joe Bob felt fine. Dying was the last thing on his mind. Nevertheless, he was already a sick man. He got more than gas at Bill Hopscomb's Tesco and gave Harry Trent more than a speeding summons. Harry, a gregarious man who liked his job, packed the sickness to more than 40 people during that day and the next. How many of those 40 passed it is impossible to say. You might as well ask how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. If you were to make a conservative estimate of 5 apiece, you'd have 200. Using the same conservative formula, one could say those 200 went on to affect 1,000, the next 5,000, the 5,000, 25,000. Under the California dozen, subsidized by the taxpayers' money, someone had finally invented a chain letter that really worked. A very lethal chain letter. On June 19th, the day Larry Underwood came home to New York and the day that Franny Goldsmith told her father about her impending little stranger, Harry Trent stopped in an East Texas cafe called Babe's Quickie for lunch. He had the cheeseburger platter and a piece of Babe's delicious strawberry pie for dessert. He had a slight cold, an allergy cold, maybe, and he kept sneezing and having a spit. In the course of the meal, he infected Babe, the dishwasher, the two dressers in a corner booth, the man who came in to deliver bread, and the man who came in to change the records on the juke. He left the sweet thing that waited his table $1 tip and was crawling with death. On his way out, a station wagon pulled in. There was a roof rack on top, and the wagon was piled high with kids and luggage. The wagon had New York plates, and the driver, who rolled down his window to ask Harry how to get to US 21 going north, had a New York accent. Harry gave the New York fellow very clear directions on how to get to Highway 21. He also served him and his entire family their death warrants without even knowing it. The New Yorker, Edward M. Norris, lieutenant of police detective squad in the Big Apple's 87th precinct. This was his first real vacation in 5 years. He and his family had a fine time. The kids had been in seventh heaven at Disney World in Orlando, and not knowing the whole family would be dead by the 2nd of July. Norris planned to tell that sour son of a bitch Steve Carella that it was possible to take your wife and kids someplace by hard car and have a good time. Steve, he would say, you may be a fine detective, but a man who can't police his own family ain't worth a pistol drill in the snowbank. The Norris family had a quickie at Babe's, then followed Harry Trent's admirable directions to Highway 21. Ed and his wife Trish marveled at his southern hospitality while the 3 kids colored in the back seat. Christ only knew, I thought, what Carella's pair of monsters would have been up to. That night, they stayed in the Eustis, Oklahoma travel court. Ed and Trish infected the clerk. The kids, Marcia, Stanley, and Hector, infected the kids they played with on the tourist court's playground. Kids bound for West Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Trish infected the 2 women who were washing clothes at the laundromat 2 blocks away. Ed, on his way down the motel corridor to get some ice, infected a fellow he passed in the hallway. Everybody got into the act. Trish woke Ed up in the early morning hours to tell him that Hack the baby was sick. He had an ugly, rasping cough and was running a fever. It sounded to her like the crew. Ed Norris groaned and told her to give the kids some aspirin. If the kids' goddamn crew could only have held out for another 4 or 5 days, he could have had it in his very own house, and Ed would have been left with the memory of a perfect vacation, not to mention the anticipation of all the gloating he planned to do. You could hear the poor kid through the connecting door hacking away like a hound dog. Trish expected that Hector's sickness symptoms would abate in the morning. Croup was lying down sickness, but by the noon of the 20th, she admitted to herself that it wasn't happening. The aspirin wasn't controlling the fever. Poor Hack was just glass-eyed with it. His cough had taken on a booming note she didn't like. His respiration sounded labored and phlegmy. Whatever it was, Marcia seemed to be coming down with it, too. Trish had a nasty little tickle in the back of her own throat that was making her cough, although so far it was only a light cough she could smother in a small hanky. We've got to get Heck to a doctor, she said finally. Ed pulled into a service station and checked the map paperclip to the station wagon's sun visor. They were in Hammer Crossing, Kansas. I don't know, he said. Maybe we can at least find a doctor who will give us a referral. He sighed and ran an aggravated hand through his hair. Hammer Crossing, Kansas! Jesus, why do you have to get sick enough to need a doctor in some goddamn nothing place like this? Marcia who was looking over the map at her father's shoulder, said, "It says Jesse James robbed a bank here, Daddy, twice." "Fuck Jesse James," he said. Ed groaned. "Ed!" Trish cried. "Sorry," he said, not feeling sorry in the least. He drove on. After 6 calls during each of which Ed Norris carefully held his temper with both hands, finally found a doctor in Paulson who would look at Hector if they could get him there by 3. Paulson was way off their route, 20 miles west of Hammer Crossing, but now the important thing was Hector. Ed was getting very worried about him. He'd never seen a kid with so little oomph in him. They were waiting in the outer office of Dr. Brennan Sweeney by 2 in the afternoon. By then, Ed was sneezing too. Sweeney's waiting room was full. They didn't get in to see the doctor until nearly 4. Trishkin Rose had to more than a sludgy semi-consciousness and felt feverish herself. Only Stan, age 9, still felt good enough to fidget. During their wait in Sweeney's office, they communicated the sickness, which would soon be known across the disintegrating country as Captain Trips, to more than 25 people, including a matronly woman who just came in to pay her bill before going on to pass the disease to an entire bridge club. This matronly woman was Mrs. Robert Bradford. Sarah Bradford of the Bridge Club, cookie to her husband and close friends. Sarah played well that night, possibly because her partner was Angela Dupre, her best friend. They seemed to enjoy a happy kind of telepathy. They all won 3 rubbers resoundingly, making a grand slam during the last. For Sarah, the only fly in the ointment was that she seemed to be coming down with a slight cold. It wasn't fair arriving so soon on the heels of the last one. She and Angela went out for a quiet drink in a cocktail bar after the party broke up at 10. Angela was in no hurry to get home. It was David's turn to have the weekly poker game at their house. She just wouldn't be able to sleep with all that noise going on unless she had a little self-prescribed sedative first, or in her case would be 2 slow chin fizzes. Sarah had a ward 8 and the 2 women rehashed the bridge game. In the meantime, they managed to infect everyone in the Paulson cocktail bar, including 2 young men drinking beer nearby. They were on the way to California just as Larry Underwood and his friend Rudy Schwartz had once gone to seek their fortunes. A friend of theirs had promised them jobs with a moving company. The next day they headed west, spreading the disease as they went. Chain letters don't work, it's a known fact. The $1 million or so you were promised, if you'll just send $1 single to the name and at the top of the list, add yours to the bottom, and then send a letter of 5 friends, never arrives. This one, the Captain Trips chain letter, worked very well. The pyramid was indeed being built, not from the bottom up, but from the tip down, said tip being a deceased Army security guard named Charles Campion. All the chickens were coming home to roost. Only instead of the mailman bringing each recipient bale after bale of letters, each containing a single dollar bill, Captain Trips brought bales and bales of bedrooms with a body or 2 in each one, and trenches and dead pits, and finally bodies slung into the oceans on each coast, and into quarries, and into the foundations of unfinished houses. And in the end, of course, the bodies were brought where they fell. Sarah Bradford and Angela Dupre walked back to their parked cars together, infecting 4 or 5 people they met in the street, then pecked cheeks and went their separate ways. Sarah went home to infect her husband, his 5 poker buddies, and her teenage daughter Samantha. Unknown to her parents, Samantha was terribly afraid that she had caught a dose of the clap from her boyfriend. As a matter of fact, she had. Yes? Oh, okay. As a further matter of fact, she had nothing to worry about, which, next to what her mother had given her, a good working dose of the clap was every bit as serious as a little eczema of the eyebrows. The next day, Samantha would go on to infect everybody in the swimming pool at the Paulson YWCA, and so on.